glad you're here today. I'm Judy Kundert, and today I'm going to tell you about the great railroad production that happened in the United States in the 1800s, and it connected both coasts. People couldn't travel from coast to coast. It would take months and sometimes longer to go visit or go travel from coast to coast. So they decided they would build what they called the Transcontinental Railroad. And there was one special horse called Blind Tom who helped build this. Come along and I'm going to tell you the story of Blind Tom and how he helped to build the Transcontinental Railroad. Blind Tom, the horse who helped build the Great Railroad. This is the story of a real horse who lived long ago in the 1860s. The horse was called Blind Tom because he could not see. Though he was blind, he was strong and smart, and he could work. He pulled flat cars of rails, spikes, and tools. His work helped to build the Great Railroad. What was the Great Railroad used for? Traveling. Before the Great Railroad was built, going between the eastern states like New York and Pennsylvania to the western states, California and Oregon, took a long time. Back then, there were no cars or airplanes. Travelers had to sail on ships all around South America, or they had to ride hundreds of miles across the country in wagons pulled by horses, mules, or oxen. The trip took months. A train! This could go much faster, but there were no railroad tracks that went the way across the country. The track started on the East Coast and stopped at the Mississippi River. So the president, Abraham Lincoln, decided to build the Great Railroad. The tracks would go from the Mississippi River to California. When it was finished, people would be able to travel from east to west in just a few days. The American people liked President Lincoln's plan. They were excited to think that they would soon have a railroad to take them across the country so quickly. Building the railroad was very hard work. Workers! Thousands of workers were hired to build the Great Railroad. Some were veterans of the Civil War. Others came from China, Ireland, and other faraway countries to live in America and help lay the new tracks. But the workers needed help. They had no way to move heavy rails and spikes, which were pulled onto flat cars. The cars were very hard to load. What do you suppose could help the flat cars? Horses! The railroad workers brought in many horses. The workers pulled the cars on the tracks and hitched them to the horses. Then the horses pulled the cars to the places where the new tracks were being laid. The people chose the strongest and smartest horse to be the leader. Which horse do you suppose that was? Blind Tom! Every morning, a man hitched Tom to the first flat car of iron rails and spikes. When the flat car was ready, the man gave Tom a firm pat on the flank and said, "Giddy up!" Tom knew what to do. He galloped to the end of the track. Workers called iron men waited at the end of the track for Tom and his load. When he arrived, the men called, "Whoa!" and Tom stopped. Tom patiently waited as the men lifted the rails from his car one at a time. What do you suppose Tom did as he waited? He listened. When the crew boss shouted, "Down!" Tom heard the men drop the rail in place with a loud clank. Then the man with hammers pounded in the spikes. It was very noisy. Clang, clang, dang! The workers lifted each rail one by one. Each time, they made sounds over and over again. Down, plonk, clank, clank, dang. Down, plank, clank, clank, dang. To Blind Tom, it was like a song. The song did not end until the car was empty. When Blind Tom's flat car was empty, the workers pushed it off the track. Blind Tom returned to his end of the line, and the horse behind him moved forward with a new load. At the end of the line, Tom waited for the workers to hitch a new flat car to his harness. When they said, "Giddy up," he hurried back to the iron men again. Then he listened to another clang song. All day, Tom went back and forth along the tracks. As he did, something was happening. What do you suppose it could be? The tracks were growing. Each day the tracks grew longer and longer. Men and animals worked for years. The workers knew that the railroad could not be built without Tom and the other horses. "Tom works as hard as we do," a man said. Everyone nodded and agreed. Bad weather made the work even harder. In the winter, snow and ice made the ground slippery. Cold winds sometimes hurt Tom's ears and eyes. He had to pull extra hard to drag his flat car through the heavy snow. This made him tired and sore. In the spring, rain and melting snow sometimes made the rivers flood. Blind Tom had to pull his car through the deep mud. Occasionally, he even got stuck. Getting stuck is scary for a horse, but soon the workers came to help him. One day, a news reporter was watching the workers build the railroad. He saw the flat cars full of rails and spikes. He saw the horses pulling them. The reporters wrote stories about the railroad for people to read in the newspaper. Blind Tom was in the stories too. Soon, Blind Tom was a little bit famous. Each day, telegraph operators sent a message to the railroad workers asking how long the track had grown. The operators had stories about Blind Tom. They knew wherever Tom was, that was how far the railroad tracks stretched. So instead of asking the workers the miles of track they had laid, what do you suppose they asked? "Where's Blind Tom today?" At last, the railroad workers finished the tracks. The job had taken 6 years. In that time, the workers had built almost 2,000 miles of track. To celebrate, the railroad companies had a special golden spike ceremony on May 10th, 1869. People from all over the United States met in a big field high in the Promontory Mountains of Utah. Everyone came to watch the railroad chiefs pound in the last spike, which was made of gold. Both the men missed when they tried to hit the golden spike with their hammer. Everyone laughed. One of the railroad men finally hammered in the last spike. Clang, clang, clang. The sound was very familiar to Blind Tom. But this time, instead of hearing down, plonk, all he heard was the cheering of the crowd. A telegraph operator sent the good news to the world. He wrote only, "Done!" A photographer took a picture of the railroad workers in front of the tracks. Blind Tom, he stood in the back with his friend. This was the end of Blind Tom's hard work, but it was a new beginning for America. Wasn't that interesting? Now, wouldn't you like to know more about the Transcontinental Railroad and how it changed things? There's so many books on it and so much, it'd be a fun school project. So I hope when you get done here, you'll rush to the library or you'll go online to find out about the Transcontinental Railroad and how it made America great. Thanks for coming and come back soon.